Wild, free-roaming horses and burros shall be protected from capture, branding, harassment, or death, as stated by the Wild, Free-Roaming Horse and Burro Act of 1971. Prior to the passage of this law, wild mustangs and burros were slaughtered by the thousands. Their numbers were reduced from 1 to 2 million at the turn of the 19th century to a few thousand who continue to roam free today. Once we as a nation affirmed these animals as an integral part of our American heritage and purposed to protect them, it became necessary to manage large numbers of animals. The Bureau of Land Management, or BLM, is charged with this responsibility. In order to maintain habitat and open range, the BLM developed the Adopt a Horse or Burro program. This program places these animals in private care with individuals all over the country.
Hi, I'm Connie Alexander. Today we will see these Mustangs in the wild and then hear the stories of the people who have adopted them. We will also take you to a wild Mustang adoption in Cross Plains, Tennessee, and learn what you can do to adopt one of these beautiful animals. Also in today's program, we're going to be talking with Dr. Cindy Johnson about something that's very important for your horse, but often overlooked. Let me ask you another question. When was the last time you picked out your horse's hoofs? It's very important. We're going to find out just how important today. Well, we've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. To begin with, we're going to talk with Shane Bakes of the Bureau of Land Management. She shared information with us about their valuable adoption program. We caught up with Shane at Equitana USA in Louisville, Kentucky. Let's talk with her now. Shane, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
And this is Comanche.
This is Comanche.
All right.
He is a wild horse.
He's a wild horse. This Comanche was adopted through the
Bureau of Land Management's Adopt a Horse program. He was originally captured in Wyoming. And he's been with his owners now for about 12 years.
12 years. Fantastic. What a gorgeous animal. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more about the program. Why was it implemented?
Well, in 1971, Congress passed an act protecting all the wild, free-roaming horses and burros on public lands that are administered by the Bureau of Land Management and the Department of Agriculture. And actually the reason that came about was a lady by the name of Wild Horse Annie, who started a letter writing campaign with all the children across America.
Oh my goodness.
That is the only act that has ever passed Congress unanimously.
And probably as a result of children being involved.
As a result of the children being involved.
Fantastic.
And 1973 is when we started the adoption program, when we realized that the horses were reproducing and they had no natural predators.
Right.
And since 1973, we've adopted about 180,000 wild horses.
180,000. That's fantastic. What kind of people would want to adopt wild horses?
Anyone who's always wanted a wild horse. It's a piece of American history. It needs to be somebody who has a lot of time and a lot of patience to work with one. Because when you do take them home, they are wild, and it does take time, but they're very trainable, as you can see, and you can do lots of things with them.
Yeah. Do you have a follow-up program for the horses that have been adopted out that you kind of know where they are?
We have a compliance program. Yeah, we keep up with all the horses. They're all freeze branded, and that's a number that's uniquely for each horse, and we're able to track them with that number until they're titled.
Right.
And a horse cannot be titled until after they've been adopted for a year. During the first year that they have the horse, technically it still belongs to the federal government. It's federal property, and that's kind of a safety for the horse and for the adopter.
For the adoptee.
Because if the adopter has the horse and find out that it can't handle it, it's too wild, or they didn't know what they were getting into, that does give them a mechanism to turn the horse back in.
That was going to be my next question. What happens if someone has a real problem and just can't work with a horse?
You can turn it back in, and it won't stop you from adopting again. I mean, if it's just been a problem, a horse that you can't handle, we would much rather you bring it back to us than try any other means of getting rid of it.
Exactly. All right, fantastic. Well, if someone wanted to adopt a horse, how would they go about it? Do they have to come out west, or do you have centers?
Oh no, we have adoption satellites all over the United States. Anywhere you live, you can find somewhere to adopt a horse near you, probably within driving distance.
I see.
Anyone who is interested in adopting, there is an application that has to be filled out prior to adopting one. Because we want to make sure that you're committed to taking care of the horse and that you have the facilities that these horses need when you first take them home.
All right, Shane. Well, we will make sure your information gets out there.
Okay.
And thank you, Comanche. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. As promised, we are taking you to a wild Mustang adoption at Cross Plains, Tennessee. This adoption center is the only one east of the Mississippi. While we were there, we met with Karen Malloy, who is a wild horse specialist with the BLM. Karen, who has adopted Mustangs herself, gave us a few pointers on the adoption process. Good morning, this hot July morning. How are you, Karen?
I'm great, thanks for coming.
Tell me a little bit about what we've got going on here. First of all, you're with the Bureau of Land Management, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The Bureau of Land Management administers the herds out in the West and also runs the Adopt a Horse program, where the excess animals are put into the adoption program for private adoption.
Okay, and these are the wild Mustangs that are rounded up on public lands?
That's right. There's
Okay.
herd management areas in 10 western states where these animals come from.
Okay. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is these animals are basically sent to adoption centers all over the country, and then private citizens can come in and adopt these animals.
That's correct. There's adoption centers all over the East and West. We're in Tennessee here at the East Coast facility, but we have satellite adoptions all over the eastern U.S. and the western U.S. where we'll ship in a truck or two full of horses for a weekend adoption.
I see, and that's basically what we've got here.
This is a permanent facility that's open one weekend a month, and we try to go to, for instance, Missouri a couple of times a year, or New Jersey once a year. So once a year we try to hit a lot of the other states.
Right, right. Okay. Well, how many animals do you think you have here today?
We've got about 60 or 70, including 18 burros.
18 burros. Okay. What are some of the requirements of someone who wants to adopt one of these wild Mustangs or burros?
You have to have a corral that's suitable for a wild animal. It's got to be 5 foot for a burro, 6 foot for a horse. It's got to have a shelter attached.
Okay. Okay. And this it's a permanent structure, correct? I mean, it's not. It has to be basically something that they can get in and out of the weather year round.
The shelter should be either a stall or a shed.
Okay.
The fence can be wood or it can be pipe, and a lot of the pipe fences are pipe panels that hook together that actually can be moved and changed.
Right.
But
right.
it's got to be solid, sturdy, and tall.
Tall. Okay. What is the cost to adopt a Mustang or burro?
Here at the center, all animals are $125. But if you go to a satellite adoption where we just rent a fairground for the weekend,
Right.
it's a competitive bid, which is like an auction.
Oh, I see. It's quite a bit of difference there. So what kind of ranges are you usually talking about when you're talking about the auctions? If someone were not in this area and went to one of these fairgrounds?
Well, because the market price is determined by the adopter's
Right.
desires.
Right.
If it's young,
Yes.
if it has color, in other words, if it's not just a brown horse, but perhaps a Palomino, a buckskin, or a Pinto,
Right.
there's going to be more competition and the price will be higher.
Okay.
If it's a 3-year-old bay stud and there's a pen full of 3-year-old studs, then it's probably going to be close to 125.
Ah, I see. Okay. Okay. So tell me, Karen, how many animals do you feel that you'll adopt here this weekend?
A typical weekend we adopt 25, 30 animals.
Excellent. Excellent.
And of course we're open once a month, so
Here at this
here at
center,
this
yeah.
center, a typical satellite adoption can be anywhere from 50 to 100.
I see. What happens to the animals that don't get adopted?
The animals in the east that don't get adopted come back to Tennessee,
Okay.
where they rest, and then they'll go to another satellite adoption or they'll be adopted here, but we keep them until they're adopted.
Until they're adopted. Okay. These animals are not, they're very pretty, and basically when you just look at them, they just look like quote unquote standard type horses. What can you tell us about their personalities at this point?
They are a wild animal, and some of the horses we've had here for a few months have lost the initial fear that they had of humans, and so you can get quite close to them.
Right.
But they are a wild animal. They don't lead. You can't put a halter on them when you first get them. And if you corner them, they'll defend themselves because they still see you as a predator. So don't adopt a horse on a whim.
Right.
Think about what you're doing, study training techniques that use resistance-free methods, and prepare to spend an hour a day for as long as it takes, 6 weeks, 6 months, a year, whatever it takes. Younger animals are easier to train, and believe it or not, studs usually are easier than mares.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's interesting. I would imagine that people would think it were quite the opposite, that the mares would be a little easier to calm.
People confuse female with being
Calm,
gentle, and in the wild, the mares are the decision makers and the leaders of the band. Young stallions have no status in horse society until they're old enough to become a herd stallion, which is usually about the age of 10.
Oh my.
So at the age of 2, when they're thrown out of their father's bands, they wander as outcasts or in bachelor bands with each other. And basically they stay immature longer.
Yeah.
They like to be friendly more so than a female. Female horses go into heat at 18 months, and
So they're ready to
once
rock
a
and
month
roll,
for the rest
yeah.
of their life they're on a heat cycle. A young stud can be castrated once he's gentled,
Right.
and geldings make great saddle horses. And generally speaking,
Excellent.
young studs are the easiest thing you can adopt and gentle.
Well, fantastic. I think that tells people a lot. I really think that may have been a misconception for people. Thank you, Karen. I appreciate your time.
Did you know? Stallions herd their mares and foals with a snaking motion of their head and neck. They shake their head back and forth and effectively move the herd in the direction they choose. The word Mustang comes from the Spanish, meaning stranger or outsider. These horses were reintroduced to the Americas by the Spanish conquistadors and have Arab Barb bloodlines. Native Americans domesticated and developed their own breeds from these wild horses. These include the Chickasaw Indian Pony, the Appaloosa, and the Cayuse Indian Pony. Mustangs exhibit all variety of color and generally stand between 14 and 15 hands high. Marcia Goins attended a wild Mustang adoption in 1989 at Cross Plains, Tennessee. She fell in love with one of the dirty, skinny yearlings she saw there. There was just something about him that made her want to take him home, and they have been partners ever since. We talked with Marcia at Single Tree Farms in Cross Plains, Tennessee about her beautiful Mustang, Comanche.
Marcia, hello. How are you today?
I'm fine.
On this gorgeous July 1st. Tell me, you have a horse, Comanche. How did you come to own Comanche?
Well, actually it was 11 years ago. We moved here to Cross Plains, and we'd been here probably 2 or 3 months, and I discovered there's an adoption center actually here in the town of Cross Plains, which I had no idea. We went out and we looked at the horses and were amazed that they really looked pretty rough.
Yeah.
And I guess it was about a month later we went out to the center and they were having a horse show. And all the horses there were horses that had been previous wild Mustangs that had been adopted, and they had a horse show. And these horses were there doing everything that I've always seen domestic horses doing.
Sure.
And I was just so amazed at these horses, and they had been trained, and there was one horse that was standing at the trailer, just standing here tied, you know, at the trailer, and just stood there and went to sleep. And never pawed and never did anything, and I thought a couple of my show horses would be standing there really impatient, and I was really impressed.
Right.
So a couple months later, my husband and I, Joe, we talked about it, and when I was young and growing up, I'd always thought it would be really cool. You know, I watched all the Western movies and watched all the cowboys and Indians and looked at all the horses and thought it'd be really cool, you know, to have a Mustang
To have a
one day.
wild Mustang.
Of course, that was way in the back of my mind, and I really hadn't thought about that in years, but here all of a sudden it was kind of like in my back door. So we talked about it and we discussed it and talked to some of the people that had adopted Mustangs, and we decided that we would try it. So we went ahead and we adopted 2 horses. Actually, it was November of 1989. And since that time, we've had a total of 6 altogether. All have been males. We've placed them in different homes, all except the one that I have kept.
Right, Comanche.
Yes.
There are a lot of people who love these horses. They have a passion for these horses. And don't want the kind of terrible things that happen to them when they remain in the wild and get old. Would love to own one, but they're just worried. What, you know, I don't know if I can handle a wild Mustang. What would you suggest these people do?
The first question I ask is, have you ever had a horse yourself?
In the first place.
If they tell me no, then I tell them this is not the place to start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If they have had horses or do have horses, if they have experience, if they know, then I tell them I don't think they would have a problem. I always suggest, and this is just my personal suggestion, to get them younger I like my domesticated horses younger too.
Yeah.
The younger you get them, then they don't have a lot of bad habits.
Right.
They haven't been spoiled by people. Of course, these Mustangs haven't been spoiled by people at all.
No.
And that's the interesting thing. When you get a Mustang, he has not been spoiled by anybody.
Yeah.
And when you teach him something, he learns it.
Yeah.
And he
yeah.
keeps it.
Yeah.
He doesn't, you know, you don't.
No
you're
bad
not
habits
worried.
to-
No,
not-
no bad habits to get around.
Right.
But they learn really, really, really fast. They're super smart,
Yeah.
and they're very willing to please you.
Thanks, Marcia. We'll let
Thank
you
you,
get
Ms.
on that
Conn.
horse.
Thank you very much.
Today, Dr. Cindy is here for Cherokee's yearly checkup. Part of that checkup includes routine vaccinations. She talked with us about the importance of these vaccinations. Dr. Cindy, there's some controversy out there about whether or not horses should be immunized. We immunize dogs. Should we also immunize our horses?
Just like any other animal, you want to make sure and immunize your horses. There are a lot of diseases out there, and especially with so many horses being taken in and taken out of areas, it's really important to vaccinate because they're exposed to a lot more than they used to be.
Excellent.
What we use in this area most commonly are the eastern and western encephalitis, the rhino flu, and the tetanus.
And the tetanus. Okay. When you do immunize, at what age do you start your immunization?
Well, that's kind of subjective. Some people will begin it as soon as the colt is weaned from the mother. Some people want to start a little bit before that. Just around in that area is a good generalization.
Okay. Is this a one-time process, or will the horses, do they need to be immunized at regular times?
They need to be boosted every year. There are a few of the vaccines that need to be boosted twice a year.
Oh, I see. I see. So those are records you need to keep pretty much on top of.
Right. And there are some important issues with brood mares. They have some vaccinations that they need to be repeated several times throughout the pregnancy. So it just depends on the horse, the area that it's in, and its use.
Okay. Many animals stay, obviously, only in the pasture, but there are also show animals, or owners transport them back and forth for various reasons. Do you have any suggestions what horse owners should do when it comes to taking their horses to different areas?
If you're planning to take your horse to a different area, most of the time there's a certain region that you show your horses in, but a lot of times people will take their animals even across state lines in order to ride them on trail rides and so forth.
Exactly.
And so it's important to know what are the state regulations on vaccination schedules, Coggins tests, and things like that before you cross the state borders.
I see. So that's another record you really need to carry with you.
Yes, definitely.
When you're going to travel. Once a horse has been immunized, do you use live or dead vaccines? Could they possibly get sick from these immunizations?
Most vaccines are killed vaccines. They will cause a little bit of a reaction, a little bit of fever, maybe a little inappetence, just not feel quite right for about a 24-hour period, just like children do when they get their vaccinations.
Exactly. And then that pretty much passes.
Yes, it's usually nothing to worry about.
Okay. So would it be safe to say, Dr. Johnson, that you feel that regular immunization and vaccination is an important part of horse health care?
Oh, it's a very important part. And I realize that it's very confusing deciding what types of vaccinations to give your horse and what exactly your horse does need.
Right.
And so the best thing to do is just to contact your veterinarian and let him help you.
Help with that. Excellent. Thanks, Dr. Johnson.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. When people groom their horses, they often forget their horse's feet. To keep your horse healthy, you must incorporate hoof care into your daily grooming routine. Daily hoof care is an important aspect of maintaining sound footing for your horse. Farriers report that hoof problems are often caused by too much moisture in the hoof. A horse who stands for long periods of time in a wet stall with accumulated waste is at high risk for developing thrush. Thrush, a disease that infects the frog, will also occur if a horse's hooves are not picked at regular intervals, preferably on a daily basis. Begin to pick the hoof by loosening dirt, manure, and possibly foreign bodies with a hoof pick. Make downward thrusts with a pick in the clefts of the frog. It is important to remove all debris from around the frog and then the rest of the hoof. If you notice a black foul-smelling substance in the cleft of the frog or anywhere around the foot,
you should contact your farrier or veterinarian to have your horse evaluated. Picking the hooves daily helps you catch a problem early when it can easily be treated.
Earlier in the show, we heard Shane Banks describe some of the requirements for adopting a wild Mustang or burro. One of the mandatory requirements for adoption is a corral or a round pen. This enclosure must be 6 foot high for horses over the age of 1 year and have a 400 square foot interior. Once gentled, your horse can be maintained on a pasture. The metal round pen you see here is a perfect choice for just such an enclosure.
The round pen is an excellent training tool for any horse, wild Mustang or otherwise. Many of today's top trainers advocate the use of a round pen to help safely develop basic control of your horse. They are economical, lightweight, and as you can see, relatively easy to build. If you have never worked a horse in a round pen, do your homework. Research industry experts and find out what they suggest you can do to safely work your horse in one of these pens. There are numerous videos and publications that detail safe methods for round pen training. Well, our crew is about finished and in record time. The pen took very little time to build and didn't require any tools to complete. Costs will vary with each region. Check your local farm supply for prices and availability. Did you know the famous Lipizzan airs above the ground maneuvers were originally battlefield defenses against infantry soldiers? The wild Mustang of the North American Western Plain exemplifies strength and endurance. Halfway around the world, there is another horse, although not born in the wild, that also equally exemplifies strength and endurance. This animal is known and loved worldwide. We are happy to share with you a performance of the Hermann Original Royal Lipizzan Stallions of Austria. Colonel Hermann.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
It's my pleasure to meet you.
Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about what you're doing here in the United States.
All right. What we bring to the United States, this is not a horse show.
Right.
A horse show is competition, completely different. Some of my guests talking about trick horses. That's a no-no. Trick horses, that is our category. The Lipizzaner, these are war horses, and what we present is combat movements.
Oh, I see.
What goes back more than 2,000 years.
Oh my.
The movements what we present goes back over 2,000 years to Xenophon.
Right, right.
Xenophon, the Greek. The movements are all natural.
I see.
They are no trick horses.
Tricks. Yeah.
Every horse in the world can do the same movements.
Oh,
He
seriously?
is born with the movements.
Yeah, yeah.
But what we have done, we take these movements und used it als a Wappen gegen Fußsoldiers, like die Cabriole, die Langsade, die Corbette. Why is it so important, the horse? The answer is simple, because the horses served us for more than 2,000 years.
Right.
In any kind, in transportation, in agriculture, in war, in sport, you know.
Right.
So we should never forget
Their
what the
service.
horse have done for us.
Right, right.
See, these horses, all the horses, got more than 3 gates, you know.
Right.
Not only, each gate is natural, like eine Piaffe. Eine Piaffe gives you 60 points in the Olympic, trot on one place.
Right.
Ja, what is eine Piaffe? Die Piaffe ist ein Lauftanz. Ein Lauftanz.
Oh my, yeah.
When the stallion sees the mare, a good stallion,
Right, right.
he shows up.
He really shows
You know,
up.
he
Sure.
put his head up and he screams and starts trotting on
Drops
one
those
place.
feet, yeah,
Piaffe,
yeah,
nicht?
yeah.
Cabriole. Was ist eine Cabriole? When the baby horse comes the first time out, and it's a beautiful day, he jumps in the air and strike out.
Oh yeah.
Or you
Yeah.
have the 2 young babies together.
Right.
They like to play, so what they're doing, they're going on back legs and playing with
Moving out.
Anna.
Sure, sure.
The art is to bring the memory back to the young
the play.
stallion what he does as a baby.
Right.
Und used it on command.
Well, we can't wait. I know you've got to get to it. I'm holding you back from getting on a saddle
A
now.
lady like you could never hold, no? You guys wait, all right?
Bless your heart, you are a doll. Thank you,
dear,
sir. It's
thank
been
you
a joy.
very much.
Take care
Glad
and
you
have a good
enjoyed it.
show.
Thank you.
Horsekeeping is not an easy job, but it can be very rewarding. One last thought for the day. There is a universal law that states you will reap what you sow. Sow kindness and consideration into the lives of the animals and the people you encounter today. I guarantee you it will return to you when you least expect it, and probably when you need it the most. As always, when you are horsing around, be safe.
Okay, don't eat that grass, okay? You must relax and don't eat that grass, all right? Relax. Here. Okay, you'll be a good boy. Don't be so nervous. Yeah, that's all right. I know you like to talk. Okay, now schön langsam. Okay, you be nice? All right. Okay, you be nice. All right.